I was 8 months pregnant when my husband told his mother on speakerphone, "She has let herself go completely. I am disgusted. Every time I look at her, I am only staying until the baby comes." I was standing right outside the door. I quietly walked away. 3 weeks later, he was banging on my lawyer's door at 2 a.m., screaming my name. I am writing this from my hospital bed, 2 days after giving birth to my daughter. My sister is here with me. My parents are on their way. My husband is not here, and he will never meet this baby if I have anything to say about it. The nurses keep asking if I want them to call him, and I keep saying no. They look at me with these sympathetic expressions like they understand, but they do not. Nobody could understand unless they heard what I heard. Let me go back to the beginning, because the whole story matters, and I need to get it all out before I lose my nerve. I met James 4 years ago through work. I am a financial analyst for a commercial real estate firm. James was a project manager for one of our development clients. We got to talking during a site visit and he asked me to dinner. He was charming and attentive and made me feel like I was the only person in the room. We dated for a year before he proposed. Got married the following spring. Everything seemed perfect. We bought a house together in a nice neighborhood. Nothing extravagant, but comfortable. I made good money, and James did well enough. We split the mortgage and bills evenly. We talked about starting a family eventually, but we're not in any rush. We were building our careers and enjoying our life together. Last year, around October, I found out I was pregnant. It was not exactly planned, but we were both happy about it. James seemed excited. He came with me to the first ultrasound. He told everyone at work. He started talking about converting the spare room into a nursery. The first trimester was rough. I had morning sickness that lasted all day. I was exhausted constantly. I lost weight instead of gaining it. My doctor said it was normal but concerning. I needed to rest more and try to eat whatever I could keep down. James was supportive at first. He would bring me crackers and ginger ale. He would rub my back when I was throwing up. But somewhere around month 4, things started to change. The morning sickness finally stopped, but I was still tired all the time. My body was changing in ways I was not prepared for. I gained back the weight I lost, plus more. My face got puffy. I had swelling in my feet and hands. My doctor said it was all normal, but I felt like a stranger in my own body. James started working late more often. He would come home after I was already in bed. On weekends, he would make plans with his friends or find projects that needed doing around the house. Always something to keep him busy and away from me. When I tried to talk to him about it, he said he was stressed about work, about becoming a father, about money. He said I was being too sensitive because of hormones. I believed him. I thought I was being unreasonable. Pregnancy brain, they call it. I tried to give him space and not be needy. I threw myself into preparing for the baby. I spent hours researching cribs and car seats and strollers. I washed tiny clothes and organized the nursery. I read books about labor and breastfeeding and newborn care. I was determined to be ready. James's mother, Linda, had never been my biggest fan. She made comments about my career from the start. Asked when I was going to give James children. Suggested I should think about staying home once we had a family. I brushed it off as old-fashioned thinking. James always defended me to her face, but I noticed he never really contradicted her. He would just change the subject. Once I got pregnant, Linda became even more vocal. She had opinions about everything. What I was eating, how much weight I was gaining, whether I should continue working. She sent me articles about natural childbirth and breastfeeding. She told James he needed to make sure I was taking care of myself properly. Like I was some kind of incubator that needed monitoring. James started spending more time talking to his mother. Long phone calls that he would take in his office with the door closed. When I asked what they talked about, he said she was giving him advice about being a father. I thought it was sweet that he was trying to prepare. I had no idea what they were really discussing. About 6 weeks ago, when I was around 7.5 months pregnant, I had a routine doctor appointment. My blood pressure was elevated. Nothing dangerous, but enough that my doctor wanted to monitor it closely. She told me to reduce stress and rest as much as possible. She said if it got any higher, I might need to go on bed rest or even be induced early. I told James when he got home that night. He barely looked up from his phone. He said that was fine, and we would deal with it. Then he went back to scrolling through whatever he was looking at. I remember feeling so alone in that moment. Standing in our kitchen at 7 months pregnant, telling my husband I might have a serious complication, and he could not even put his phone down to look at me. Things got worse over the next couple of weeks. My blood pressure stayed elevated but stable. I was constantly exhausted. My feet were so swollen I could only wear slippers. I had trouble sleeping because I could not get comfortable. James had stopped even trying to help. He barely spoke to me. He came home late and left early. We were living in the same house but existing in completely separate worlds. 3 weeks ago, I was 8 months and 1 week pregnant. That is 33 weeks for anyone counting. It was a Saturday afternoon. I had spent the morning doing laundry and trying to organize the last few things for the baby. James had gone to his office to catch up on work, or so he said. He came home around 3 in the afternoon. I was in the bedroom folding baby clothes when I heard him talking downstairs. His voice was loud enough that I could tell he was on the phone, but not clear enough to make out words. I needed to go downstairs anyway to get some water, so I headed down the stairs slowly. I was moving carefully because my balance was off and I did not want to fall. As I got closer to the bottom of the stairs, I realized he was in the living room. His voice became clearer. I could hear him saying something about being stressed. Then I heard my name. I stopped on the stairs and listened. He said she has let herself go completely. Like it is my fault, I am pregnant with his child. I just stood there frozen, unable to move, unable to breathe. Then he said I am disgusted every time I look at her. The words hit me like a physical blow. This was my husband, the man who had promised to love me in sickness and in health. The father of the baby I was carrying, and he was disgusted by me. But he was not done. He said I am only staying until the baby comes. Then I can figure out what to do. I need to talk to a lawyer and see what my options are, but I cannot leave her while she is pregnant. It would look too bad. I realized he was on speakerphone. I could hear Linda's voice responding, but I could not make out her words. James laughed at something she said. Then he told her he had to go and would talk to her later about their plan. Their plan. They had a plan. For after the baby came. For when he would leave me. I stood on those stairs for what felt like an hour but was probably only a minute. My mind was racing. My heart was pounding so hard I thought the baby could probably feel it. I wanted to march into that living room and confront him, to scream and cry and demand to know how he could say those things. But something stopped me. If I confronted him now, he would deny it or make excuses or turn it around on me. He would say I misheard or took it out of context. He would say hormones were making me irrational. And I would be standing there 8 months pregnant and vulnerable, with nowhere to go and no plan. So instead, I quietly walked back upstairs. I went into our bedroom and sat on the edge of the bed. I let myself cry for exactly 5 minutes. Then I stopped. I washed my face and pulled myself together. I walked back downstairs like nothing had happened. James was in the kitchen making a sandwich. He looked up when I came in and asked if I was okay. I said I was fine, just tired. He nodded and went back to his sandwich. We spent the rest of the evening in silence. He watched television and I pretended to read a book. We went to bed in the same room and I laid there awake all night planning what I was going to do. Monday morning, I called my sister Diane. She lives about 20 minutes away. I asked if I could come over during my lunch break, and it was important. She said yes immediately. She could hear in my voice that something was wrong. I left work at noon and drove to her house. When she opened the door and saw my face, she pulled me inside and made me sit down. I told her everything. Every word James had said. How long things had been bad. How alone I felt. I broke down completely. She held me while I sobbed and told me it was going to be okay. That I was going to be okay. That my baby was going to be okay. Then she got very calm and very practical. She asked me what I wanted to do. I told her I wanted to leave him, but I did not know how. I was 8 months pregnant. I did not have anywhere to go. I could not afford the house on my own. I was terrified. Diane asked if I had any evidence of what James said. I did not record him if that is what she meant. She nodded and said that was fine. She asked about our finances, who owned what accounts we had. I told her the house was in both our names. We had a joint checking account for bills, but we each kept our own savings. My name was on my car. His name was on his. Everything was fairly separate. She asked if I had a lawyer. I said no. Why would I have a lawyer? She pulled out her phone and called someone. She talked for a few minutes, then handed me the phone. It was a divorce attorney named Patricia Webb, one of Diane's friends from college. Patricia asked me a few questions about my situation, about the house and finances and the pregnancy. Then she told me to come see her that Wednesday at 4. I went to see Patricia that Wednesday after work. Her office was in a professional building downtown. She met me in a conference room with a legal pad and a sympathetic expression. I told her everything. The phone call. How James had been acting. My concerns about what would happen after the baby was born. Patricia listened without interrupting. When I finished, she asked me what I wanted. I said I wanted to protect myself and my baby. I wanted to make sure James could not take everything and leave me with nothing. She nodded and started explaining my options. She said I could file for divorce now while I was still pregnant. Virginia allows that, though the divorce cannot be finalized until after the baby is born. Or I could wait until after the baby was born to file anything. She explained the pros and cons of each. If I filed now, I would have the element of surprise and could get ahead of whatever James was planning. If I waited, he might file first and control the narrative. She also explained that being pregnant did not mean I was helpless. I had been working throughout my pregnancy. I had my own income. I had contributed equally to the household and the mortgage. I had rights and I needed to protect them. We talked about next steps. She said first we needed to document everything. I needed to start keeping records of our finances, print out statements showing my contributions, save any texts or emails that might be relevant, take photos of the house and the nursery I had set up, create a paper trail. She also said I needed to open a new bank account in just my name. I should start directing my paycheck there instead of the joint account. I needed to protect my income from being drained. She gave me a whole list of things to do before we filed anything. Patricia also explained about her fees. She said she normally required a retainer, but she could offer me a payment plan since I was on limited income with the baby coming. I had savings I could use, but I was grateful she was willing to work with me. I agreed to pay what I could up front, and the rest over the next few months. I left her office feeling overwhelmed but also strangely empowered. I had a plan. I was taking control. James thought he was going to leave me helpless and destroyed after the baby came. He had no idea what was coming. Over the next week, I did everything Patricia told me to do. I opened a new checking account at a different bank. I changed my direct deposit. I printed out months of bank statements showing I had been paying half of everything. I forwarded emails to my personal account. I took photos of every room in the house. I documented everything I had bought for the baby. Every receipt, every item. James did not notice anything was different. He was barely paying attention to me at all. He came home late most nights. On the nights he was home early, he stayed in his office or watched television alone. We spoke maybe 10 words a day to each other. It was like living with a stranger. I also started asking questions, casual questions that would not raise suspicion. I asked about his retirement account from work. He mentioned the balance once. I wrote it down. I asked about his car payment. He showed me a statement when I asked if we could refinance to save money. I took a photo of it. I was gathering ammunition. Patricia and I met again the following week. I brought her everything I had collected. She reviewed it and nodded approvingly. She said we had a good foundation. Now we needed to decide on timing. She explained that if we filed now before the baby came, we could freeze the assets and prevent James from doing anything sudden. We could also establish custody expectations from the start. Since I was still working and self-sufficient, the court would not see me as dependent on James. That was important. I made the decision to file immediately. I was tired of living in limbo, tired of pretending, tired of sharing a bed with someone who was disgusted by me. Patricia said she would have the papers drawn up and we could file by the end of the week. That Friday afternoon, I got a call from Patricia. The papers were ready. She asked if I wanted to have James served or if I wanted to tell him first. I thought about it. Part of me wanted to see his face when he got served, but I was also 8 months pregnant and living in a house with someone who might react badly. I told Patricia to go ahead and serve him. I would not be home when it happened. I would stay with Diane until I knew it was done. Patricia said that was smart, and she would arrange for service on Monday afternoon when James would be home from work. That weekend was surreal. I packed a bag with essentials and told James I was going to stay with Diane for a few days. She had been asking for help with something, and I wanted to spend time with her before the baby came. James barely looked up from his phone. He said fine and went back to whatever he was doing. I left Saturday morning and did not look back. Diane had already set up her guest room for me. She and her husband Tom said I could stay as long as I needed. They were both so kind and supportive. I felt safe there in a way I had not felt at home in months. Monday afternoon, I was sitting in Diane's living room when my phone started ringing. It was James. I let it go to voicemail. It rang again and again. Then I got a text. "What the hell did you do?" Then another. "Call me right now." Then another. "You cannot do this while you are pregnant." I did not respond. Patricia had told me not to engage, to let her handle everything. My phone kept ringing. James called probably 30 times over the next hour. I turned it off and put it away. Patricia called me that evening. She said James had been served and he had called her office screaming. She had told him to get his own lawyer and they could discuss things properly. He had demanded to know where I was. She told him that was none of his business. She said he had threatened to report me for kidnapping my own unborn child, which made no legal sense, and she had hung up on him. The next few days were a blur. James kept calling and texting. I blocked his number, but he started calling from other phones. He sent emails. He showed up at my office, but security escorted him out when I told them I did not want to see him. He went to Diane's house, but Tom told him to leave or he would call the police. James finally hired a lawyer, some guy named Robert who Patricia said was mediocre at best. Robert called Patricia and tried to negotiate. He wanted me to come back to the house. He said we should try counseling. He said James was devastated and wanted to work things out. Patricia shut that down immediately. She sent over our demands. I wanted the house or James needed to buy out my share. I wanted full physical custody, with James getting supervised visitation until we could establish paternity and work out a proper schedule. I wanted child support based on the state calculations. I wanted my name off any joint accounts or loans. I wanted a clean break. Robert tried to argue that I was being unreasonable, that James was the father and had rights. Patricia responded with a letter detailing everything I had documented. The financial contributions. The fact that I had set up the entire nursery and bought everything for the baby. The fact that James had been absent and distant throughout the pregnancy. She did not mention the phone call I overheard because I had no proof. But the implication was clear. James had checked out long ago. 2 weeks went by. I was now 36 weeks pregnant and getting close to my due date. I had officially started my maternity leave from work. I was exhausted and uncomfortable and ready for this baby to arrive. I had moved most of my belongings out of the house with Tom's help while James was at work. He had not even noticed. He was too busy trying to figure out how to undo what I had started. Patricia and Robert were still negotiating. James wanted to split everything 50-50. He wanted shared custody. He wanted me to agree to leave his retirement account alone. Patricia countered with evidence that I had paid more toward the house than he had over the past year, that I had bought all the baby supplies, that he had contributed almost nothing to preparing for this child. James started calling me from his mother's phone. Linda left me voicemails begging me to reconsider, saying I was being selfish and vindictive, that James loved me and I was keeping his child from him, that I was going to regret this. I saved every voicemail as evidence of harassment. Then 3 weeks after I filed the papers at exactly 37 weeks pregnant, I went into labor. It was 10 p.m. on a Thursday night. I was at Diane's house watching television when my water broke. Diane drove me to the hospital. Tom called my parents, who started driving in from 2 hours away. Patricia had already given the hospital instructions that James was not to be contacted or allowed in my room. Labor was long and difficult. My blood pressure spiked, and they had to give me medication to bring it down. I pushed for 3 hours. Finally, at 6:42 a.m., my daughter was born. 7 pounds 3 ounces, perfect and healthy and screaming. They put her on my chest and I fell in love instantly. The nurses asked for the father's name to put on the birth certificate. I told them to leave it blank. They looked surprised, but wrote it down. I could add him later if I wanted to. Right now, I did not want his name anywhere near my daughter. When they asked what last name to put, I told them my maiden name. Charlotte Rose Miller. She was mine. She did not need his name. That first day in the hospital was peaceful. My parents arrived and met their granddaughter. Diane and Tom came back with flowers and balloons. My coworkers sent cards. Everyone was respectful of the fact that James was not there. Nobody asked where he was. They seemed to understand something was wrong. The second night I was in the hospital, my phone started ringing around 2 a.m. It was Patricia. She sounded tired and annoyed. She said she was sorry to bother me, but I needed to know what was happening. James had shown up at her office building at 2 a.m., banging on the door and screaming my name. Apparently, he had found out I was in the hospital. I later learned that one of my coworkers had posted congratulations on social media with a photo before I could ask her not to. James had been checking hospitals and social media obsessively. He had tried to come see me, but hospital security turned him away based on the instructions I had left. He had completely lost it. He had gotten Patricia's office address from the divorce papers he had been served. In his rage and desperation, he drove to her office building in the middle of the night. He had been banging on the glass doors, screaming for her to come out, screaming that she needed to tell him where I was and let him see his baby. The building security had called the police. James had been arrested for disturbing the peace and trespassing. Patricia said Robert had already contacted her about getting the charges dropped if I would agree to let James meet the baby. I told her, absolutely not. James made his choice when he told his mother he was disgusted by me. When he said he was only staying until the baby came, he did not get to decide now that he wanted to be involved. Patricia said that was fine and she would tell Robert. She also said the arrest would probably help our case. It showed James was unstable and potentially dangerous. A judge would take that into consideration for custody. I hung up and looked at my daughter sleeping in the bassinet next to my bed. She had no idea what kind of chaos was swirling around her. She just slept peacefully with her little hands curled into fists. I promised her right then that I would protect her from all of this. That she would never feel unwanted or like a burden. That she would grow up knowing she was loved. Update 1. I have been home from the hospital for 2 weeks now. I am still staying with Diane and Tom. They have been absolutely incredible. Diane had offered to watch Charlotte during the day once I went back to work. I insisted on paying her the same rate I would pay any daycare provider. She tried to refuse, but I stood firm. This was going to be her job, and she deserved to be compensated fairly. We agreed on an amount that was fair to both of us. My parents stayed for the first week and just left yesterday. I have never felt so supported. The baby is perfect. Charlotte is eating and sleeping and making these little sounds that melt my heart. I am exhausted and overwhelmed and completely in love. Breastfeeding is harder than I expected, but we are figuring it out. The lack of sleep is brutal, but every time I look at her face, it is worth it. My therapist says the exhaustion and emotional ups and downs are normal for new mothers, especially given everything I am dealing with. I started seeing a therapist a few weeks before Charlotte was born, and it has been helpful to have someone to talk through all of this with. James has been trying to see Charlotte since the day she was born. He has called and texted and emailed. He has shown up at Diane's house multiple times. Tom has told him to leave every time. He filed an emergency motion for visitation rights, but the judge denied it because of the arrest and the ongoing divorce proceedings. Patricia said we would deal with custody once paternity was established and everything else was settled. That was an important legal step. Since I had left James's name off the birth certificate, we needed to establish paternity before any custody or child support orders could be put in place. Patricia filed a motion to establish paternity. Robert agreed to DNA testing rather than fight it. The results came back 2 weeks after Charlotte was born, confirming James was her biological father. With paternity legally established, we could proceed with child support and custody orders. Robert sent over a new settlement proposal. James was willing to let me have the house if I refinanced and bought out his share. He wanted shared custody once Charlotte was old enough. He wanted to be there for doctor appointments and important milestones. He was willing to pay child support, but wanted the amount reduced because he was also paying a financial settlement to his ex-fiancée. Wait, his ex-fiancée? That was news to me. I had no idea James had been engaged before me. He had never mentioned it, ever. In 4 years together, he had never once said he had been engaged. I called Patricia immediately and asked what she knew about it. Patricia did some digging. Turns out James had been married for 2 years in his 20s. He got divorced about 8 years ago. The divorce decree was public record. His ex-wife's name was Michelle. They had no children. The divorce was finalized on grounds of irreconcilable differences. James had agreed to pay spousal support for 5 years after the divorce. That support had ended about 3 years ago, right before I met him. But apparently, there was another financial obligation I did not know about. Patricia found out through Robert that James had been engaged after his divorce to a woman named Tara. They had called off the wedding, but not before some kind of incident occurred. James had been paying Tara a financial settlement every month for the past 3 years. Not spousal support, since they were never married, but a private settlement agreement to make her go away. That was where some of his money had been going. I was furious. Not just about the money, but about the lies. James had lied to me about his entire past. He had pretended to be someone he was not. And I had built my life with him based on those lies. Patricia said this was actually good for our case. It showed a pattern of financial irresponsibility and dishonesty. It also explained why James had been so concerned about money during my pregnancy. He was already stretched thin, paying Tara and trying to maintain his lifestyle. We sent back a counter-proposal. I would take the house, but James needed to pay for all closing costs on the refinance. He would get supervised visitation with Charlotte once a week for 2 hours. He would pay full child support based on state guidelines with no reductions. I wanted no spousal support. I just wanted a clean break. Robert tried to negotiate, but Patricia held firm. She pointed out that James had lied about major parts of his past, that he had been arrested while trying to harass me at my lawyer's office, that he had no grounds to ask for anything beyond basic visitation. The judge reviewing our temporary orders agreed. James got his 2 hours a week, supervised at a family center. Nothing more, until the divorce was final. The first supervised visit happened last weekend. I had to bring Charlotte to this facility where they have rooms set up for visits. A court-appointed supervisor sits in the room and takes notes. The supervisor files a report with the court and sends copies to both lawyers after each visit. I handed Charlotte to the supervisor and left. I did not want to see James. I could not look at him without feeling sick. The visit lasted 1 hour. James did not make it the full 2. According to the report the supervisor filed, he held Charlotte for about 10 minutes. Then he tried to take photos, which was not allowed. When the supervisor told him to stop, he got angry. He demanded to know why he was being treated like a criminal. He said I had poisoned everyone against him, and this was not fair. The supervisor ended the visit early due to his behavior. Patricia said this would also help our case. James could not even make it through 1 hour without causing problems. The judge would see that, and probably keep the supervised visitation in place long-term. I felt relief and sadness at the same time. Relief that Charlotte would be protected from James's instability. Sadness that my daughter's father was so broken and angry that he could not even focus on her for 1 hour. My maternity leave is almost over. I go back to work in 2 weeks. Diane will watch Charlotte during the day, which is such a blessing. My boss has been understanding and said I could work from home 2 days a week to ease back into things. Financially, I am doing okay. My salary covers my expenses. The house refinance went through last week. James's name is off the title and mortgage. He got his buyout check, and I got full ownership. It felt good to have that done. One less thing tying us together. I went back to the house for the first time last weekend to start cleaning and moving back in. Tom came with me in case James showed up. The house was a mess. James had clearly been living there alone for weeks and had not cleaned anything. There were dishes piled in the sink, trash overflowing. The nursery I had so carefully set up was untouched but dusty. It made me sad to see it. Tom and I spent the whole day cleaning and packing up James's remaining belongings. Anything he had left was going into storage. I wanted no trace of him in my house. Charlotte's house, our fresh start. While I was cleaning, I found some papers in James's office, bank statements I had not seen before, credit card bills. There was a lot of debt I did not know about. James had been using credit cards to fund his lifestyle and had not been paying them off. He was easily $30,000 in debt beyond what I had known about. I took photos of everything and sent them to Patricia. She said she would argue that this hidden debt should be assigned to James in the divorce, since he had concealed it from me and used it for his own purposes, not marital expenses. She could not guarantee the judge would agree, but the evidence was strong that he had been living beyond his means and lying about it. I also found emails printed out and stuffed in a drawer. Emails between James and Linda, discussing their plan. They had been strategizing for months about how James could leave me after the baby was born. Linda had been advising him to wait until I gave birth, so he would not look like the bad guy. She had even helped him look for apartments and calculate how much child support he would have to pay. The emails went back months. This was not a spur-of-the-moment thing. This was calculated and planned. One email in particular made me sick. James had written to Linda saying he was keeping certain documents and correspondence because he might need evidence later. That explained why he had printed out the emails and kept them. He thought he was building his own case. He had no idea those same documents would be used against him. Reading those emails made me physically ill. This was not a spontaneous decision. This was a calculated plan. James and his mother had been plotting my downfall for months while I was pregnant with his child. The level of cruelty was staggering. I sent the emails to Patricia. She called me immediately. She said these were gold. Proof that James had been planning to abandon me and Charlotte. Proof that he had no intention of being a present father. Proof that Linda had been involved in manipulating the situation. This changed everything. Patricia filed an amended petition including the emails as evidence. She argued that James had demonstrated a pattern of deceit and manipulation, that he had caused me emotional distress during a high-risk pregnancy, that his behavior had contributed to my elevated blood pressure and difficult labor. She was asking for sole legal and physical custody, with only supervised visitation for James, no overnights, no holidays. Supervised only. Robert was scrambling. He tried to claim the emails were taken without permission. Patricia shut that down by pointing out I had found them in my own house while cleaning. They were not privileged communication. They were just evidence of what James had been planning. The divorce hearing is scheduled for next month. Patricia is confident we will get everything we are asking for. The evidence is overwhelming. James has done nothing to help himself. Every time he has had a chance to show he is a stable, involved father, he has failed. The supervised visits continue to be a disaster. He has made it to maybe half of them. The ones he does attend, he spends complaining about me and asking the supervisor questions about my life instead of focusing on Charlotte. Charlotte is doing great. She is almost 6 weeks old now. She's starting to smile and make eye contact. She tracks movement with her eyes and responds to sounds. Every day, she is more alert and present. I love watching her discover the world. I have been thinking a lot about whether I am doing the right thing, keeping James at a distance. My therapist and I talk about this often. Part of me wonders if I should try to encourage a relationship for Charlotte's sake. But then I remember what he said about me. How he was disgusted by me. How he was only staying until the baby came. He did not want to be a father. He wanted to escape. And now that I have made it impossible for him to control the narrative, he is angry and trying to play the victim. Charlotte deserves better than that. She deserves a parent who is there because they want to be, not because a court ordered it, not because they feel obligated, but because they love her unconditionally. I can give her that. James has proven over and over that he cannot. Update 2. The divorce was finalized last week. I got almost everything I asked for: sole legal and physical custody. James gets supervised visitation 2 hours per week, child support payments of $1,500 per month, the house and most assets in my name. The one thing that did not go completely my way was the hidden debt. The judge ruled that about $5,000 of the credit card debt was from joint marital expenses like groceries and household items, even though it was on James's cards. I was assigned responsibility for that portion. The remaining $25,000 in debt was assigned to James since he had hidden it and used it for personal expenses. Patricia had warned me this might happen. In Virginia, marital debt is typically shared even if one spouse did not know about it. But at least I was only responsible for a small portion. James did not even show up to the final hearing. Robert appeared on his behalf and basically conceded everything. He told the judge that James was unable to attend due to work obligations. The judge was not impressed. She noted that James had failed to prioritize his daughter throughout these proceedings, and that spoke volumes about his commitment to fatherhood. Patricia was brilliant. She presented all the evidence methodically: the emails, the financial records, the supervised visit reports, the arrest record, James's ex-wife's information. Everything painted a picture of a man who was irresponsible, selfish, and dishonest. The judge agreed with our assessment. When the judge issued her ruling, she said something that stuck with me. She said every child deserves a parent who sees them as a blessing, not a burden. She said it was clear from the evidence that James viewed Charlotte as an inconvenience, that his behavior during my pregnancy and after her birth showed a complete lack of regard for either of us. She said she was granting sole custody to protect Charlotte from further harm. I cried when she said that, not sad tears. Relief tears. Charlotte was safe, legally protected. James could not swoop in and take her or make decisions about her life. She was mine. Since the divorce, James has made even less effort to see Charlotte. He has only shown up to 2 supervised visits in the past month. Both times he held her for a few minutes, then spent the rest of the time on his phone. The supervisor noted that he showed no emotional connection to the child, no attempts to engage or bond, just physical presence to check a box. Charlotte is now 3 months old. She is thriving. She is sleeping longer stretches at night. She laughs and coos and grabs at toys. She recognizes my face and Diane's face and lights up when she sees us. She has no idea her father exists, and honestly, I am okay with that for now. I went back to work full-time last month. Diane watches Charlotte during the day, and I rush home every evening to spend time with her. The balance is hard but manageable. My boss has been flexible about letting me work from home when needed. My coworkers have been supportive. Life is finding a new normal. Financially, I am doing better than expected. My salary covers all my expenses, including the mortgage and paying Diane for childcare. The child support payments from James have been consistent so far. I put that money into a savings account for Charlotte's future. College or whatever she needs, I do not want to touch it for day-to-day expenses. It is hers. Therapy has continued to be helpful. My therapist has helped me process the betrayal and the anger. She has helped me see that none of this was my fault, that James's actions were about his own brokenness, not about anything I did or did not do. She reminds me weekly that I made the right choice protecting myself and Charlotte. I have also joined a single mother support group through the hospital. We meet once a month and talk about the challenges of raising kids alone. Many of the women have similar stories: husbands or partners who left during pregnancy or shortly after, fathers who are absent or inconsistent. It helps to know I am not alone in this. Last month, I got a friend request on social media from Michelle, James's ex-wife. I almost declined it, but curiosity got the better of me. I accepted and sent her a message asking if we could talk. She responded immediately and gave me her phone number. Michelle told me she had been keeping tabs on James over the years. Not obsessively. But she wanted to know if he was hurting other women the way he hurt her. When she saw my pregnancy announcement on Facebook last year, she started following my posts. When she saw I had the baby and James was not in any of the photos, she suspected what had happened. She wanted to reach out earlier, but was not sure if I would believe her. We talked for over an hour. Michelle told me her story. She and James had gotten married young. She thought they were building a life together. But James had been lying about money the entire time. He had secret credit cards and gambling debts. He would disappear for days and claim he was working. He was emotionally abusive and manipulative. Michelle said she finally left when she found out he was having an affair with a coworker. She filed for divorce and moved out. James fought her on everything, tried to claim she was taking his money, tried to paint her as the bad guy. But the truth came out in court. The affair, the gambling, the debts. She got her divorce and got out. She said she was not surprised to hear about what happened with me. She said James always played the victim, always found someone else to blame for his problems. She warned me that he would try to worm his way back into my life eventually, that he would apologize and claim he had changed. She said not to believe it, that men like James do not change. They just get better at hiding who they really are. Hearing her story was validating and terrifying at the same time. Validating because it confirmed my decision to leave was the right one. Terrifying because it showed James was capable of sustaining lies and manipulation over years. I had only seen 4 years of it. Michelle had been with him longer. I also talked to Tara. Michelle put me in touch with her. Tara's story was similar. She and James had dated for 3 years. He proposed. She was thrilled. But as they planned the wedding, she started noticing red flags. Money disappearing. Lies about where he had been. Emotional distance. Tara said she called off the wedding 2 months before it was supposed to happen. James lost his mind. He threatened to sue her for breach of contract. He claimed she had ruined his life. He harassed her family and friends. Finally, she agreed to a financial settlement just to make him go away. She had been paying him monthly for 3 years to keep him out of her life. Talking to these women was eye-opening. James had a pattern, a history. I was not special or unique. I was just the latest in a string of women he had manipulated and discarded. The only difference was that I had gotten pregnant. That had complicated his exit strategy. I told Patricia about my conversations with Michelle and Tara. She said their stories could be useful if James ever tried to fight the custody arrangement. But for now, we had everything we needed. James was out of my life legally, and that was what mattered. James's mother, Linda, tried to contact me several times over the past few weeks. She sent me a long email saying she was sorry for how everything turned out. She said she had only been trying to help her son. She said she never meant for me to get hurt. She said she hoped I would consider letting her have a relationship with Charlotte. I did not respond. Then she called twice from different numbers. Then she sent another email asking about Charlotte's health and development. Then she showed up at Diane's house one afternoon when I was not there asking Tom about the baby. That was the last straw. Linda had been part of James's plan to destroy me. She had encouraged him to wait until after the baby was born to leave. She had helped him look for apartments and calculate child support. She had called me and begged me to reconsider the divorce while I was in labor with her granddaughter. She did not get to play the concerned grandmother now. Patricia sent Linda a cease and desist letter. No contact with me or Charlotte. If she wanted a relationship, she would need to petition the court separately for grandparent visitation rights. Given her involvement in James's behavior, that petition would probably be denied. Linda has not contacted me since the letter was sent. Life has settled into a routine. I get up early with Charlotte, feed her and get her ready for the day, drop her at Diane's on my way to work 8 hours, pick her up and come home, dinner and bath time and stories, rock her to sleep, clean up the house, fall into bed exhausted, repeat. It is not the life I imagined when I married James. But it is a good life. A peaceful life. Charlotte is happy and healthy and loved. I am building something stable for both of us. We do not need James's chaos and manipulation. We do not need Linda's toxic involvement. We are better off without them. Final update. It has been 6 months since the divorce was finalized. Charlotte is now 9 months old. She is crawling and pulling herself up on furniture. She has 2 teeth and is starting to eat solid foods. She babbles constantly and says mama and dada, even though she has no idea what dada means. She is the light of my life. James has stopped attending the supervised visits completely. He has not seen Charlotte in over 3 months. His child support payments became sporadic after a few months. Some months he paid the full amount. Other months he paid partial or nothing at all. Patricia filed for wage garnishment, so now the money comes directly from his paycheck before he even sees it. I heard through Michelle that James lost his job. Apparently, he had been falling apart at work even before the divorce. The stress of his lies catching up to him, combined with his inability to cope with consequences, had made him unreliable. The divorce just accelerated what was already happening. He had been missing work and performing poorly for months. His company let him go. He is living with Linda now and working some kind of contract job that pays much less than his previous salary. His life has completely fallen apart. Part of me feels vindicated. He chose to abandon his pregnant wife and unborn child. He chose to lie and manipulate. He chose to prioritize his own comfort over his responsibilities. Now he's living with the consequences of those choices. But another part of me just feels sad. Sad for Charlotte, who will grow up without a father. Sad for the man James could have been if he had made different choices. Sad for the life we could have built together if he had been honest and present. I started dating someone new a few months ago. His name is Eric, and he is an architect. We met through mutual friends at a dinner party. He knew I was a single mother before he asked me out. On our first date, I told him the whole story. I figured if it scared him off, better to know early. But he just listened without judgment. He said his own sister had been through a difficult divorce, and he had seen what strength it took to rebuild. He thought I was brave for protecting Charlotte. Eric has met Charlotte and is wonderful with her. He does not try to replace James or play dad. He is just present and kind and supportive. It is refreshing to be with someone who is emotionally available. He asks about my day and actually listens to the answer. He respects my boundaries and understands that Charlotte comes first. He is patient with the chaos of single motherhood. Last week, Eric asked me what I wanted for the future. I told him I wanted peace. I wanted Charlotte to grow up in a stable, loving home. I wanted to be with someone who saw me as a partner, not as a burden. Someone who was there because they wanted to be, not because they felt trapped. He said he wanted those things too. That he was not scared off by the fact that I had a baby. That he thought I was strong and brave and a great mother. That he was excited to see where things went with us. I am not rushing into anything. I learned my lesson with James about moving too fast and ignoring red flags. But I am open to the possibility of love again. Of building a family that is based on honesty and respect. Of giving Charlotte siblings someday with a man who will actually be there for them. The house is fully mine now. I have redecorated and made it feel like home again. Charlotte's room is filled with books and toys and everything she needs. My room is peaceful and comfortable. The office James used is now a playroom. There is no trace of him left. My therapist and I have been working on forgiveness. Not for James, but for myself. Forgiving myself for not seeing the signs sooner. For staying when I should have left. For believing his lies. She says I was not naive or stupid. I was trusting, and trust is not a weakness. It is a strength. James broke that trust. That is on him, not on me. I ran into James 2 months ago at a grocery store. It was the first time I had seen him face to face since before Charlotte was born. He looked terrible, older and tired and defeated. He saw me and Charlotte in the cart and just stared. I felt nothing. No anger or sadness or regret. Just emptiness. He started to walk toward us, but I turned and walked away. He called my name, but I did not stop. I had nothing to say to him. He had made his choices, and I had made mine. We were done. Charlotte has grandparents who love her. My parents visit regularly and video chat with her every few days. Diane and Tom are like bonus parents. She has aunts and uncles and cousins. She is surrounded by people who would do anything for her. She does not need James's half-hearted attempts at fatherhood. She has real love and support. I look at her sometimes and wonder what her life will be like. Will she ask about her father someday? Will she want to know why he is not around? I will tell her the truth when she is old enough to understand. I will tell her that some people are not capable of love, that his absence says nothing about her worth, that she was wanted and loved from the moment I knew she existed. People ask me if I regret marrying James, if I wish I could go back and change things. The truth is, I do not know. If I had not married him, I would not have Charlotte, and I cannot imagine my life without her. She is worth every bit of pain and betrayal I went through. She is the best thing that ever happened to me. James thought he could discard me like I was nothing. Thought he could wait until I gave birth and then walk away with no consequences. He thought he held all the power. But he was wrong. I had the power all along. The power to protect myself and my daughter. The power to build a new life. The power to choose who gets to be part of our story. Charlotte will grow up knowing she is loved, knowing she is valued, knowing she deserves respect and honesty and kindness. She will never settle for someone who makes her feel small or unwanted. She will know her worth because I will teach her. And as for James, he is just a footnote in our story now. A cautionary tale about the cost of cruelty. He lost everything because he could not see what he had. He threw away a family for some fantasy of freedom. Now he has neither. I am not the woman I was when I married him. I am stronger now, more confident, more clear about what I want and what I will accept. I built myself back up from nothing. I created a life for Charlotte and me that is full of love and possibility. The night James told his mother he was disgusted by me, I stood outside that door and felt my world crumbling. I thought my life was over. But really, it was just beginning. That moment of complete devastation was the catalyst for everything good that came after. So, to anyone reading this who is in a similar situation, who feels trapped and alone and terrified, I want you to know that you have power. More power than you realize. You can choose yourself. You can choose your child. You can walk away from someone who does not value you and build something better. It will not be easy. There will be days when you want to give up. Days when you are so tired you cannot see straight. Days when you wonder if you made the right choice. But keep going, because on the other side of that pain is peace and freedom and a life that is truly yours. Charlotte is calling from her crib. She is awake from her nap and ready to play. This is my life now. My beautiful, chaotic, exhausting, perfect life. And I would not trade it for anything. James thought he could break me, but all he did was help me realize how strong I really am.